back and give me this ball. Everybody, here comes Scorpio. Man, you can't make it. Man, that was too cold. That was too cold.
Ain't you kids supposed to be in school?
Nah, man, we going to the game room.
What do you mean to the arcade? You guys need to be in school trying to get an education. Tell you what, I'll take you guys to school.
Are we going to ride in limousine?
Nuh-uh.
We're going to walk?
Let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to step.
All the legs move. He's his own man, he does his own rules. Who's his opponent? He don't care. I like to go for brother. He attacks on the air. Too cold. Scorpio. Too cold. He walks the top rope. It's over his. If you want to mix it up, it's you he will diss. Drop kicks, fighting punches in his repertoire. No doubt about it, gonna be a superstar. Too cold. Scorpio. He's loaded with fucking fire, so they say, who is it? Too cold, Scorpio. He got so much on face, you wonder what's in store. Or what's all in the ring, or one on the floor. There's so many things, too many to this, but you better beware of the this and don't miss.
This is the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, presented by Hami Media and the Pro Wrestling Reflection, where we discuss the very best of the best in pro wrestling history.
And what you gonna do when Hulkamania and the largest arms in the world run wild on you?
The two soundest wrestlers in the World Wrestling Federation, maybe in the history of the World Wrestling Federation, are right here, right now. Mr. Perfect and the excellence of execution, the Hitman.
WrestleMania weekend isn't complete without the Heartbreak Kid, and he is on his way.
He put hard times on Dusty Rhodes and his family.
They think they got the answers. I change the question.
You will rest in peace.
Get used to it in Ric Flair. Who you're looking at, the man.
This man! What the Get down, 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 get down.
What is going on there, Reflectionites? What is going on there? The DeVitoites, the Haminites, all the ites, the Magnificent 7, the Elite 8, the Naughty 9, the Terrific 10, the Essential 11, the Tubular 12, the Toxic 13, the Fluorescent 14, the Fabulous 15, the Sensational 16, the Sexualized 17, all the Reflectionites out there. What's going on to the Dems, the Repebs? What's going on to the Ukrainites, the Russianites, all the ites in the world? What's going on to the Hermaphrodites? What's going on to the Irites, the Israelites? But okay, I'm going on a harangue. It's okay. Because I'm kind of excited here, Reflectionites. I'm kind of excited to do this spotlight. And before anything, it is a PWR Spotlight. It is a special spotlight. Before I delve into that, into more details, I I must introduce myself because I am so vain like that. Again, when I introduce myself, I get 5 years younger. But if I introduce myself well, I get 8 years younger. So you know what? I get 8 years younger. I lose a little bit of the belly. The penis gets a little bit bigger. So I must introduce myself so gloriously right now. So indulge me, Reflectionites. I am the most charismatic one. I am the most effervescent one. I am the most stupendous one. But most importantly, I am the most glorious one. Shit, it grew. The only objective man in the IWC, YWC, PWC punditry, the only objective man in this political spectrum. Your friend of mine, the Professor Chabel Cruz. And I'm not here alone, no. Because when I introduce this man, he gets 8 years younger. The pot belly gets slimmer, and he grows a couple inches in his you-know-what. But neither here nor there. He is your friend of mine, Dr. Frickenstein, WWE its own Mr. Wonderful. Tommy, wonder how you doing, my friend? And you're gyrating a action figure right now.
So, I always want to add a Miz figure to my collection. He's unsung, he's underrated. I don't know if he's untapped potential. He's 2-time Grand Slam champion, right? Mm-hmm. So, I opened basics, and so I saw this figure on eBay for $6, and it was $6.36 shipped. Well, when I got it home, I found out. You know why it was only $6?
Why was it $6?
This arm is a basic. This arm is this nonsense. It's a Flex Force figure, and the legs bend like this, but they don't bend anywhere else. But this is good gear. This is a good look, Miz, right here.
That looks like Mania when he fought Cena, or at least that year.
Right. Well, it's where he lost to Bobby Lashley too. When he won the belt and then lost to Lashley like a day later or whatever.
Okay, the pandemic Miz.
Yeah, because there's a 2-pack of that, and I don't want to pay $23.99 for the 2-pack when I already got Bobby Lashley. I don't need 2 Bobby Lashleys. I got a whole wall of shit over here where I got 2 of people, and I don't want to be like my buddy Sean in Canada and sell stuff when I get new stuff, but I'm going to have no choice, man. There's limited space. But today, my buddy Chris Valentino and his wife are on a long trek across the United States. They're Canadian. And he stops at all the toy stores he runs. He's in Wyoming right now. And he found a Cody Rhodes Funko Pop, which I got this Funko Pop that I didn't even know existed until last week. And now I own it. That's Uhtred. And he found Cody Rhodes. So I went to Walmart today and I found this guy.
You found an MJF.
Walmart exclusive. Boom, boom, boom. Kiss the ring.
Nice.
But they had him and your favorite wrestler, Wardlow.
Every favorite wrestler you name for me is not my favorite wrestler, but neither here nor there.
Roman.
But anyway, this is not an unboxing. This is not a revealing episode here for the Reflectionites, for the 12 that ride or die for us. We are doing a special PWR Spotlight. And what makes this special is because of the 2 words we say all the time here for the many years on this podcast. And TW, what are those 2 special words?
Untapped potential.
Absolutely
5
correct.
syllables.
Right, and absolutely correct. And it was apropos because I've called this man the most underrated, the most, I'm not going to say misused, but, he is the effervescence of untapped potential. His full potential was realized in one organization, in my humble opinion, maybe 2 if you count Japan, but I will say ECW. He was recognized there. The other places, not so much, but you saw a glimpse of, what could have been. And I am talking about one of my favorites from the 90s, one of my favorites of all time. He is on my number 1. I've had these discussions with TW. I've had discussions with the executive producer extraordinaire where we always said untapped potential. I've always had him number 1 on my list. 2 Cold Scorpio. So before we get into the logistics, before I even say his government name and all that stuff, I just want to say this, TW, because again, this man epitomizes untapped potential. And what's what's so great about Too Cold Scorpio, not even anything, because I know that you have stories about Too Cold Scorpio, just like you kind of sprinkled in on the last episode of the PWR podcast. I just want to say this. For all the stuff in 2023, for all the stuff that's happened maybe in the last 20 years with the evolution of pro wrestling, hybrid style wrestling, wrestlers that are all pomp and circumstance, but forget about the psychology. Too Cold Scorpio, in my humble opinion, maybe you might have a different take on this. Maybe, when people say that wrestling is an artwork, it's the beauty of the artwork of wrestling. When he did it in the 90s, it was so fluid. It was so beautiful. It didn't feel like rushed. It didn't feel like, he was doing like 15 hurricanranas. He was not getting his shit in. It made sense. It was fluid. It was beautiful. If you were sitting in the Army in the 90s to watch a Too Cold Scorpio match, if you were sitting in the 90s in ECW watching a Too Cold Scorpio match, Reflectionites, you'll know what I know. You'll see what I saw. It was just fluid. It was just beautiful. So what say you, TW, about Too Cold Scorpio? Because again, he's one of the reasons from where we were with him in the 90s, the evolution of wrestling. Again, I'm not going to say bigger, stronger, but faster, more fluid, more athletic. He's one of the main reasons why.
So funny, I forgot to mention this last week when we were talking about doing this show. He's the first name, as we called him in the locker room, that I asked to watch my show or match, and he did. We were the first match that night. He was the last match against Sabu. I also, for one night only, wrestled as the Dream Date Tommy Wonder because my wrestling name was Too Hot Tommy Wonder, and I didn't want him to think that I was stealing his shit. So instead, I didn't even ask him. I just went up. I said, hey, tonight I'm Dream Date Tommy Wonder, not Too Hot Tommy Wonder, because I didn't want him to think it was any way, shape, or form disrespectful to him. But I have a question for you. While I was watching it, and I always thought he had a different name, right? He like Too Cold Scorpio. It almost like, I guess it's like growing up in the hood, like when people had nicknames. But for wrestling, it was like there's no alliteration. It was just whatever. But do you think, or maybe Scorpio Sky names himself Scorpio Sky because he was a fan of Too Cold Scorpio? It
would behoove Scorpio Sky to at least pay homage.
Because I was Calavera Cortez, and everyone thought, because around here, Ricky Cortez was a big deal in the Dusty Rhodes Chic days. I didn't even know who he was. So when I met the guy, I just played it off like, yeah, heck yeah, man, Michigan, whatever. I wanted to use a name when they made me use the last name. I wanted some heritage. I didn't say all that, but I went with it when other people said it.
Well, you know what? I can say this.
He's old enough to have been a fan of Scorpio, is my point.
He's old enough to have been a fan. And of course, there's a West Coast connection. I know Too Cold Scorpio, again, if we go logistically, Too Cold Scorpio is from Denver, Colorado, or was born in Denver, Colorado. I know that Scorpio Sky wrestled exclusively on the West Coast with the Young Bucks and the PWG area, Sacramento, all that stuff. So, of course, California, Colorado is a couple of hours away. So there has to be some kind of connection of knowledge and knowing the history of Too Cold Scorpio. So, or he could
that could have been his favorite wrestler when he was coming up.
Who knows? It could have been.
Look how much Johnny Gargano.
I mean, you're asking me the variation of Scorpio's name, right? I mean, it could have been TOO. It could have been the number 2, or it could have just been Scorpio. I remember for one kind of like timeline. I don't know if it was WWE that did this. They just called him Scorpio because they just wanted to shorten it down. But again, neither here nor there. Go ahead.
It can't be WWE because he flashed Funk for a minute, and I think he went back to ECW after that.
No, you did, but I remember that WWE, kind of put the kibosh on the Funk gimmick, but we'll get into that later.
But I want to say this because I know ECW, obviously they use him well. It's how he made his name for himself. It's how he got signed to both companies that he went to in the first place. But I did not know about Too Cold Scorpio in ECW because, again, I didn't watch it. For many reasons. One, of which I didn't know how to watch it. And 2, I didn't think it was for me. And, I've already said a million times on this show, I was wrong. I wish I would have watched it. As a matter of fact, that match I sent you, I found so easy on YouTube where I was the first match and he was the last match. That crowd, that video, everything about it, it looks exactly like every ECW video you ever send me. It was the same type of fan base. We had ECW guys coming through here every damn show I did. It was Sabu, Taz, Dreamer. Scorpio only did one. Mick Foley actually didn't meet until Ohio, but these guys all came through here. I'm pretty sure Sandman came through once or twice, but Paulie was here often because he was either here with Taz, here with Sabu, here with Dreamer, but Scott and him were friends. So I don't know if Scott's the reason he came here or if that's how they became friends. But anyway, I digress. But WCW is where I became a fan of his, and I was a big fan of his. And it's funny because every time I can't not see it. It's going to sound like I'm ribbing him, but it's every time I see him, just his face. He reminds me when Martin was Roscoe on the Martin Lawrence show, and I can't unsee it because he reminds me of Martin, which is probably why when I first saw him,
because of the ears and the hair and the flat top,
because he doesn't really look like Martin, but the look, like that late 80s, early 90s look, and so one of my all-time favorite shows of all time is Martin, and so I just immediately liked him, and you know, you try to. I don't know what the word is, not justify or defend, because I don't know if it needs defending, especially because he's done worse things. And it wouldn't be the first time someone tried to bring a 70s gimmick to a 90s wrestling. But when I watch Flash Funk, I think to myself, like, of course, what popped through my head, you couldn't do that today unless it was his idea, right? Which you never know.
No, that was Vince's idea.
No, for sure, right? Because he did it again with Funkasaurus, whatever.
Right.
But you could tell, like, especially the match you had me watch, Vince was all in on it. Like, Vince, he didn't do it to mock him. He did it because he would, and we know he loves his sisters now, so he watched them come by with him too, and they were both a couple of hotties. But I take my hat off to him because, like I always say, they give you lemons, make lemonade. He really didn't do much more. He did all them dance moves and stuff in WCW. He just didn't have the pimp outfit. That's the thing that's kind of like, ouch, you know. But there were people in the 70s dressing like that were not pimps. I just don't understand why so many people go back to that gimmick. Like, leave the 70s dead. It was a horrible time to be in. It's a horrible time to bring back neon pink and green 80s shit. Don't bring back bell bottoms and goldfish in your shoe.
You don't like Dolomite? You don't like Huggy Bear?
No,
that's
I like
timeless.
the shit. I don't like the fashion I'm talking about. I don't mind the stuff that you watch. I don't hate the Bee Gees. I just don't want to look at people dressed like that. It was a horror. Like, the 80s had some suspicious fashions. All right, there's no doubt about it. But 70s,
as long as you're consistent with saying there are suspicious fashions in every decade,
every decade, the 90s as well. The 90s almost took the 80s shit and ramped it up, and then it went to grunge. But it had no choice. It went so flamboyant, it had to come back to lumberjack. But anyways, I really, really liked him in WCW. When he came to WWF, this is one of the first ones where, because now you're talking, remember before I told you, I didn't watch anything but WWE until around 88, 89, right? So I didn't know when people got new names. I didn't know. And then the people that I did know when they came in didn't get a new name. Terry Funk was still Terry Funk. Ric Flair was still Ric Flair. But Flash Funk, I never forget. I was like, that's fucking terrible. Like, what's wrong with Tuco Scorpio? But again, Flash Funk, alliteration. And I will say this, in that match, I think Vince McMahon had big plans for him. For whatever reason, it didn't last long. He was gone quick. But I think
I will get into that timeline, and I will explain certain things that happened to him.
He had a fan in him, in Vince McMahon. I absolutely believe that. I believe he loved his work ethic, and I think he had big plans for him and Shawn Michaels, because he kept mentioning Shawn Michaels and the move sets and all that kind of stuff, and they would have had a banger if those two would have been main event matches.
Well, since you talk about the move sets, like I said, Too Cold Scorpio, he wasn't the first, but he was one of the first that you would see on American television really using the top rope to his advantage. And what I said, it's fluid and it's beautiful. Again, he wasn't doing 1,500 flying cross bodies.
Right.
Well, he did super kicks, but everything had
1,500.
Everything had purpose. Everything was thought out, well planned. So TW, before we even get into the timeline of his career, why don't we talk about from what you saw, even in that match with Sabu a little bit, but you don't even have to say who won or lost. It's not about that. I just want to get into his match styling per se, because again, he's one of the first. The 450 splash, that was him. to use the ropes and springboard, he was one of the first. I'm not saying he was the absolute first, but on American television, especially with WCW and WWE, when you're in America and you see that, Two Cold Scorpio is one of the first 10 that you could say off the top of your dome. Oh, that was the first guy I really saw him doing that. We could always talk about Snuka with the top rope splash. We could always talk about Buddha with the moonsaults when you saw it on American television. But fluidity-wise, Scorpio was one of the first to really hanker down on the aerial assaults. What say you about that?
Well, dude, he was not only one of the first ones to do that 450, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
This motherfucker landed with a leg drop. Like, first of all, that can't feel good. And he started out backwards. He went backwards, turned around, flipped, and then landed with a leg drop on the Goon match. And I just thought, fuck. I'm like, oh, he must not have done that often or long because, dude, the pressure of landing on your butt like that, that's why I never did one leg drop anywhere other than standing. Because, believe it or not, and I think I said this on here before, and Hogan said it, it wrecks your body. It looks like the easiest thing to take as a guy laying there for sure, but people don't realize the impact you're putting on your spine. Hulk Hogan said when he started wrestling, he was 6'9", and from the years of doing that, he's now 6'5". He compressed his spine 4 inches from doing that leg drop, and it looks like the easiest move in the history of the wrestling business that's not a punch or a kick, right? So this guy's doing somersaults and all this stuff and landing with a leg drop. And there's 2 guys that wrestle now that are a little long in the tooth, also from my era, same era as Two Cold Scorpio, which he does it differently, but one of them's Jericho, the other one's Christian. Actually, Cody does it too, where a guy's on the outside of the ring, whether it's on the apron or the floor, they run and jump on the corner and springboard off the corner out of the ring to the floor. And Two Cold did it by he did an extra part. He jumped on the corner, jumped over to the outside of the rope, and then sprung off the rope that way, the second rope, not even the top rope. And it was so fluid, like you said, that you're just like, this dude did it naturally. He probably practiced as far as learning it, but I bet you he did that at will. And it's almost like John Morrison, Two Cold Scorpio has to do parkour. There's no doubt in my mind that dude's just not walking down the street and sees shit and goes bloop, 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 just to do it because he's that athletic. And I said to you before we started recording, people don't realize he's a big dude. He's not Mike Awesome big, but Mike Awesome did 1 or 2 things. Scorpio did it every match, all match, did something that made him look like he weighed 120 pounds, and yet he's about 240, 250.
Right. So let's get into the logistics of Two Cold Scorpio. There's certain names that, that's sprung out. It was 2 with the number 2 Reflectionites. It was 2 with TOO. He also had the Flash Funk, like we talked about. He was also known as Flying Scorpio. He was also known as Scorpio. And in Japan, he was known as the Black Wazuma. So again, I'm just going to give you some names right there. But his government name, Reflectionites, is Charles Bernard Skaggs, if you did not know that. Born in October 25th, 1965, from Denver, Colorado. And again, what the funny thing, TW, again, we'll talk about his chronology in the 90s, you could say, is, you even said it, he's stocky, but he's almost 6 foot. He's like 5'11", maybe 6 foot, maybe 6'1", 235 to maybe 245 pounds. In a day and age in 2023, where like 50 guys are like 5'8", weighing 185 pounds, and are on Monday Night Raw and AEW and all this stuff and all the other indie promotions. Two Cold Scorpio, with what he did, he looked like a badass. Let's say before we even get into this. I mean, he wasn't 185 pounds. He was 235 to maybe 245 pounds doing the beautiful shit.
So listen, I always got to bring it to modern day. Someone who I thought was a monster, who I thought was massive, who I thought would be like, this guy would be better suited in WWE than AEW. I found out last week I was completely wrong, and that's Wardlow. I thought Wardlow was like, what's his name? Braun Strowman size, right? And then someone I know on Facebook took a picture with him in the parking lot, and the guy that I know is about 5'3", 5'4", and Wardlow wasn't that much. He was 6, but I thought Wardlow was way bigger. But because he's in AEW, he looks bigger than he actually is. And I'm not trying to knock their roster. Half my favorite wrestlers are there, and they're little. Adam Cole, Roderick Strong's there now. I'm little. The last thing I'm gonna do is mock people for being smaller. But we're talking what a difference then and now. Because Wardlow probably isn't much bigger than Scorpio, was the reason I brought him up. And if Scorpio was there, he'd be a super heavyweight. He couldn't get in the main event slot because they wouldn't.
Do you got hair on in your mouth that you try to get out?
I don't know what the fuck it was. I got it. But I'm in a basement, man. It's probably dust or spider eggs. But
I'm sorry to the audio Reflectionites. I couldn't resist acting it because he is talking and it's like it's like I thought it was like after sex. You had something like you had some pubes in your head.
You're the one with something in your mouth there, not me.
But go on. Finish your diatribe.
But he wouldn't get put in the main event scene in AEW because they only put guys in there that are the same size as the other guy, so they don't look little. Because Wardlow should be killing everybody there, right? But now look at Scorpio in 1993. He's one of the small guys. It's insane how wrestling has transitioned the other way, right? Like we're supposed to be getting bigger as people with all the steroids and the chicken, but no, these dudes are getting smaller. But they're all athletic. I'm a fan of them, so I'm not knocking any of them. But it's amazing what you are in 93 is what you would be in 2023. Yes, it's 30 years later. I can't believe you sent me a match that was from this year. I was like, whoa. And the other day I saw your boy RVD, and I thought he looked fatter than I've ever seen him. But I think it was the suit made him look that way because he looked great in the match you sent me. And so did Too Cold. And when I read NZO, I thought it was Nunzo. So I literally thought I was going to be watching some ECW from 92. And then I'm like, what the fuck, 2003? And here's a little fun fact for you. The night before I went to the Great American Bash and worked for seconds with Terry Taylor, I was wrestling in that building that actually it wasn't that building because that was a high school, but that town, Chillicothe, Ohio, I wrestled in against Turbo, one of the twin freedom fighters that were in WCW for 3 minutes. And I replaced, do you remember Chris Carter from Bruiser Bedlam Wrestling or whatever that stuff was with Eddie Creechman, all that stuff from Canada. But anyway, I can't remember what it's called. Steve Strong, Muhammad Jihad Saad, Calypso Jim, all that stuff. But anyways, I saw the Chillicothe, Ohio. That was a Bobby Fulton show. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, wow. Chillicothe, Ohio is in the middle of nowhere. It's between Indiana and Dayton because it's close to the border of Ohio. So I would say somewhere it's not far from Lima, Ohio. And I saw that and I thought, wow. I was happy because I see Bobby pushing stuff on Facebook all the time. And I was like, it's good to see him draw because he puts a lot of names on there. You got a lot of names when one of your matches is Too Cold and RVD and Nunzo in a triple threat. That means nothing. Because normally
Enzo Amore, you know that. Jesus.
But I call him Nunzo. Same thing. And by the way, he looked great in that match. He looked great in that match.
That's
he was
2023, but we're not going into the present. We're going into the past right now.
We're talking about matches. We're talking about his career.
I know. We are. We. You know how the Reflectionites. You know us. We can't start from the beginning to the end.
I do have a Flash Funk figure. It's the only one I think that's ever been made of him. Ironically, it's horrible. It looks like it should come with an astronaut helmet because he's got a like bumper car, like metallic blue jumpsuit on with powder blue things on it, and he had the pimp hat. I lost the hat, but it's in my garage. But I'm gonna dig it out. I'm gonna make this vow to the Reflectionites, all 13 of them. When the weather breaks, I'm gonna go in my garage, and anyone that's not in this room in figure form, I'm gonna grab their Jax figure and put it in my room because it looks like I don't want certain people in my room, but no, they just don't make figures of them. And Too Cold Scorpio would be in this room.
All right, so like I said, Charles Bernard Skaggs from Denver, Colorado. He's 57 years old. My goodness, Jesus Christ.
Still flipping.
And still flipping. That's one of the things. But anyway, he started wrestling Reflectionites in 1985, in the highways and byways. And it was legendary Hall of Famer, New Japan Hall of Famer, All Japan Hall of Famer TW.
85?
Yeah, 85.
He would have been a teenager.
In the late
20s.
In the late 80s, because of Big Van Vader, a New Japan Hall of Famer, he convinced him to trek out there. So to make his money, to make a name for himself. So I just wanted to lay that out right now for everybody because he started you know, you could say he paid his dues the hard way, wrestling in Japan, wrestling in Mexico, wrestling in Europe. It wasn't a popular thing in the 80s, TW, not like it was in the 2000s and the 2010s, like the Young Bucks made it, you know,
it's where
made
veterans
it
went
cool.
to die.
Yeah, so, you know, Too Cold Scorpio paid his dues the hard way in the 80s, but made a comfortable living. So he didn't have to depend on, you know, WWF money. He didn't have to depend on WCW money. But because he was making a name for himself in the late 80s, early 90s, one of the matches I got you to watch was actually a New Japan / All Japan match. And one of his greatest, you could say, rivals, because he fought him not only in Japan, TW, but he also fought him in WCW, was Chris Benoit, the Crippler, Chris Benoit. So I know you didn't like the match per se because of the commentary, because you didn't understand, you know, what they were saying. I get that part. So we can, you know, throw that to the side. But you are a wrestler, and you saw the movesets, and you saw how, you know, the difference between American fans and Japanese fans took to these two guys. And, you know, these are two light heavyweights, but they killed each other, you could say. They were physical. So what say you about that match? Didn't matter that Chris Benoit won. Don't get me wrong, Reflectionites. TW always gets on me because I always I can't find a lot of.
I think he
when I want to
every single match.
Yes, yeah, that's the thing. But anyway, it's not about that. It's not about that. It's about how beautiful the match was, but the atmosphere of the Japanese fan base.
This is a perfect match to watch if you can get past the commentator. Which, by the way, didn't bother me because I actually sat down and ate my lunch and watched it. You know, I ate a plum, pear, or something. I don't know. But I watched it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm actually going to watch the match because we're not doing a show where we're covering storylines or whatever. So I actually watched the match. I think it was 19 minutes or 15 minutes long, whatever. But first thing to say is for anyone who is stuck in this, well, they flipped in the 90s too to defend the current wrestling, right? And again, it's okay to critique stuff. It's not, if you're shitting on it, that's not okay, right? Then you're probably never ever going to come around on it in the first place. Just don't watch it. It's not for you. I say that to the people that criticize WWE every time they do anything with I don't even watch that shit, yet they know everything about it. So the AEW, the difference with this modern wrestling flippity shit, whatever they call it, I'm not calling it that. The difference is go watch this match because Too Cold Scorpio, Chris Benoit, Pegasus Kid, they do all that flippy shit too. But you know what else they do in this match? Arm bars, reversals, monkey flips, sunset flips, suplexes, punches, kicks, clotheslines, and then they do all their flippy shit. But they do it when it means something, when it matters. And by the way, I just talked about it. This year, Too Cold Scorpio, who's 58 years old, is still wrestling guys like RVD and Nunzo or whatever, Enzo, still wrestling him, still looks good because he's not in a wheelchair. Like, unfortunately, some of these guys are going to be in if they don't take it back a bit. It's funny that I would show MJF because that was the big internet wrestling community losing their shit over his tweet. That tweet he made and deleted is because he cares about some of these guys, right? He's saying it because, listen, man, someone's got to tell these guys. And I'm going to bring him up again. The guy from the tag team, the High Flyers, whatever they're called. That dude's probably done. Dante or whatever.
Dante Martin, yes.
He's the other one. The other brother got hurt first, right? Now it's Dante.
Darius is back. Is Dante?
Yeah, but he hurt himself.
But you make it a crusade to keep him talking about Top Flight every week. This is the third week in a row.
I'm going to get him over, Dan.
I hope so.
I like him, right? But look what he did, and he wasn't even doing the move. He took the move and he hurt himself because of what risk they took doing it, right? And not to say guys back then didn't do a risk, because I'll talk about one of the guys, the match I sent you. At the end of that match, it's over. And
you talk about wait a minute, you talk about risk. I mean, this first match in Japan, he took risk doing a moonsault. I say moonsault outside. There is no pads. There's no pads outside.
He done that in the Goon match, and Goon barely caught him. He lands stomach first on concrete. So I'm not saying they didn't take risks. They just didn't take 72 of them. They didn't get up and go, all right, I didn't die that time. Let's see if I can die on this one. But Sabu, after every match I ever did a show with him, I don't know if he did this in ECW. I'm going to assume he did it. I don't know if he did it when you went and saw local shows or whatever. This dude I think he only did it if he didn't put someone through a table. He would put a table in the middle of the ring and moonsault through it with nobody on it.
Yeah, he always did that.
And I asked him in the locker room, I'm like, dude, doesn't that hurt your knees? And he pulled up his tights. You know what knee pads he wore?
What?
Volleyball knee pads. You ever seen them?
It
looks like a pillow.
They're very.
It's like there's a pillow or a turnbuckle.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I wear these, brother, and he slapped his knee real quick, and I'm like,
but don't diatribe that way. Just talk about this Japan
what I'm
match.
saying, this match is it's a clinic, and I couldn't help but think when I was watching it, like, these guys, they're telling the story. I don't know if they worked a body part per se, but they kept going back to the arms. They kept doing reversals and stuff like that. If you had that same match today, and this is where the audience comes in, you would have the same audience reaction as Japan, but it would be because they're sitting on their hands, not because it was out of respect like Japan. Like, you'd have to have that match in Japan today, because otherwise you'd get a boring chant. And that's sad to me. And that's probably half the reason these guys are doing all this high risk stuff. You don't
think the evolution of even the fan base in America, who thinks they're so smart and you know their shit don't stink, that they would mirror the Japanese fans, knowing that that's out of respect to see what they saw.
It would have to be two guys they absolutely loved who could do no wrong. If it was just two guys, like these guys aren't the main event. That's my point. They're just two guys on the card. The main event is probably Tozawa.
But they got a rep and they got a name, so we're not trying to discount what their accomplishment in Japan.
Kenny Omega versus John Moxley, you could do it. You couldn't do it Jungle Boy versus Sammy Guevara. First of all, they're both polarizing guys, so half the crowd's going to chant boring no matter what, because they hate one or the other, right?
Okay.
But I have a question for you. And like, you think of things like, I never ask a lot of questions in the locker room because you were just told not to. Nowadays, you can fucking full on interview a motherfucker, get an autograph, and then see him at the next show. But back then, you couldn't. And I wonder, Too Cold Scorpio versus Chris Benoit, when they saw that on the call sheet, do you think they were relieved because they were wrestling a guy that spoke English? Or do you think they're like, damn it, I came here to wrestle the best, which would still be them, right? But I wonder if there was relief in wrestling someone that A, you're probably familiar with, and B, you can communicate with. Because that's half the horror stories I hear when guys I knew would go to Japan is, dude, you just wrestle. You just got to look for shit. And if you don't catch what he's trying to do, like duck a clothesline, you're getting your nose broke because they can't talk.
I think I can answer this because Too Cold Scorpio, because he started his career in Japan. So what do you do when you venture to a new country? You got to learn the language.
Some words at least.
Yeah, you got to learn some words at least. And Benoit was venturing there. So when you go to Mexico and you go to Japan, you got to at least get a sense of the language. So this way you can actually communicate. So if you're going to make that commitment going overseas, you better there was no tablet. There was no app to translate from my English
they
to
probably
that language.
Have translators in the back because you get assigned different people with you when you go there. But do you know that in Mexico they work the opposite side?
Mm-hmm.
Like in the States, you work the left arm. In Mexico, you work the right arm.
It's the mirror image. It's the mirror image.
And Hulk Hogan is the only guy in America who did the fucking suplex on the other side. Everyone else did it the same way. Hogan did it the Mexican way. Not on purpose, just how he did it.
Well, that's the culture. But anyway, it was a great match, you could say, Reflectionites, because
Elton John died today?
Did he?
I just got an alert on my screen, but they said Elwin John. I think that's a typo.
Well, you know what? If Elton John died, then rest in peace. Then rest in peace. Maybe he has been sick or he has been battling some illness. So neither, I'm not gonna say neither here nor there, but rest in power. Hopefully, maybe it's a different Elton or Eldin, but they did a misspelling. But anyway, don't make me lose my train of thought, TW, because you always are the purveyor of the death. You're the gatekeeper of death.
I'm not finding nothing online, so
no, thank goodness. Then it's fake news. Okay, thank God for fake news. But anyway. It was a beautiful match, Reflectionites, because they told a story. And, of course, the Japanese fan base and that Japanese culture, he brought that style, TW, to WCW in 1992. And he made his, let's say, impactful debut tag teaming with then WCW heavyweight champion Ron Simmons. Or I don't know if he was still the champion by then. I think It was maybe a couple of months before he lost the title, but neither here nor there. But you know what I'm talking about. He was the WCW heavyweight champion. So it was a coup to team up with Ron Simmons, the main eventer, in a tag team match at the Clash of Champions. So let's talk about the WCW career per se, TW, since you saw him mostly there. Now, the presentation of Too Cold Scorpio. You got to remember, he had one of the funkiest theme songs for WCW purposes. Everybody, here comes Too Cold Scorpio. They got the gospel girl. They got, he had the funkettes, you could say, before they were even called funkettes. They were doing the two steps and all that stuff. So the presentation was there. It was kind of like, I don't want to say brick house brownish, TW, but you know where I'm going with
back up.
No. I'm not using anything, but you know where I'm going with the flashy presentation, especially for the Southern audience. But people can relate to that. It was kind of brick house-esque, just to a degree. But in comparison to the brick house, he was more athletic than brick house, and again, he was more stocky than brick house. And again, coming in debuting with the WCW heavyweight champion, he is already a mid-carder / main eventer to that highest degree. He got the rub. Challenge for the NWA heavyweight title against Barry Windham at one of the Clash of Champions came up short. But then here's where it got a little bit funky with politics. I don't know. And Too Cold Scorpio has said this in like kayfabe interviews. He doesn't like Ric Flair. He doesn't like the Nature Boy. He actually
didn't know that.
He actually thinks that Ric Flair sabotaged his career. So it makes sense in my conspiracy theory, Reflectionites, and this is just my own. I'm not saying that TW might co-sign on this, but maybe I might convince him. But it might have been a rib for Too Cold Scorpio to team up with a virgin, and that virgin's name was Marcus Alexander Bagwell. He wasn't Buff Bagwell, so he had to carry a kid. And of course, it was not unsuccessful. TW, they were former, I think, 2-time WCW tag team champions. But you get where I'm going with the conspiracy theory. He could have been a
Sandbag. He went from being with the champion to being with the rookie.
Right. He could have been the U.S. champion. He could have been multiple-time television champion. He was fighting for those titles, but he always came up short. So what say you about Too Cold Scorpio in WCW?
Well, I see. It's funny because you said it before we recorded. Like this is 30 years ago. It's rusty memories, right? But I thought enough of him that I was a fan then. I thought enough of him that I'm still a fan now, and that I was disappointed in the name change in WWE. I was disappointed how quickly he was gone. But he, again, wins and losses, not important in the grand scheme of things, because his matches were good, right? You can lose a match and still come out. Like Razor Ramon versus Scott Hall versus Shawn Michaels is regarded as one of the best matches of all time. And I'm pretty sure Razor won, but I don't think Shawn lost. You know what I mean? Like, he went on to become world champion and Razor didn't. And Steamboat, however.
I think I know where you're going with the match thing, but the politics, they screwed him. They screwed him. Ric Flair screwed him because the evidence is there. If I remember
correctly, I think I was a fan of Buff Bagwell and Too Cold. And it's funny because the match you sent me, Buff's wearing...
Oh, before anything, the match I sent TW Reflectionites was from 1993. This was maybe before or after they lost the tag team titles, and before this tag team would become one of the top tag teams in WCW in 1993. And that was the Hollywood Blondes of Stone Cold Steve Austin, stunning Steve Austin, and Flying Brian against Too Cold and Buff Bagwell. So go ahead, TW.
It wasn't Elton John, it was Elwin John, who was an inmate at Travis's prison, and his other buddy Matt is telling Travis, but it's dropping down on my screen. Anyway, they're teaming up, and Too Cold is wearing trunks, not pants. And Bagwell's wearing pants, not trunks, but they match. They're both wearing white, and Buff's got black. And it's funny because normally Too Cold's wearing pants, and Buff was the handsome stranger in the GWF wearing tights. And then I do want to talk about this match because in the theme of the untapped potential, this match has a guy that WCW completely floundered and a guy that WWF completely floundered. And the one that WCW dropped the ball with went on to become arguably the most successful WWF wrestler of all time in Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then Too Cold, who was kind of something to WCW, goes to WWF and they do nothing with him. And it's like, it's like, wow, what a difference. Two guys in the same boat, but one of them they turn into gold and the other one is there for a cup of coffee. And I just thought, man, but this is so early in the Hollywood Blondes run that Pillman's wearing the Bengals tights and Austin's wearing blue and black.
Well, this was before, again, Austin and Flying Brian felt like they weren't being pushed. So
were they even called the Hollywood Blondes yet?
No, not yet. They were just called Austin.
This is when, and then if you read Austin's
they
book,
were honing in. Yeah, they were honing in on that gimmick.
If you read Austin's book, what you're saying about Too Cold and Bagwell, Austin straight up said it. Like, fuck, I don't want to be in a fucking tag team with that guy. Like, at all. He didn't want to be in a tag team. He said it was nothing against Brian. He just didn't want to be in a tag team. He wanted to be the man, right? And then and then he ended up liking him so much they just made it work. And I would hope the same happened with Bagwell and Scorpio, but with all the stories about Bagwell that we know about these days, I mean, he might have been hard to hang out with.
Well, he's a professional. Too Cold is a professional. He made it work, and they were multiple-time WCW Tag Team Champions. So for Too Cold's sake, it was semi-successful. But in my humble opinion, it was politic sabotage by Ric Flair, if that's the case. Because again, like I said, Reflectionites, Too Cold does not have an affinity for Nature Boy Ric Flair, because Ric Flair was, he was the booker to a certain degree in the in the 90s when he was in WCW. So in that sense, TW, again, forget about the politics. Again, like I said, with this match, you even said it, they weren't matching each other. One was wearing regular trunks, and then of course Marcus Bagwell was trying to look like, the fresh-faced all-American kid. He didn't know what the fuck he wanted to be. The problem I had with this tag team, even though they were WCW Tag Team Champions, was Too Cold, comes in with his music, and of course he can, shuck and jive, and I'm not trying to do that in a negative way, but you look at the white boy, you look at Marcus Bagwell, 19, 20, whatever his age was at that time, he was the WCW Rookie of the Year, can't dance a lick, but it was supposed to look funny that he has two left feet, I guess. That's the way the presentation
Did they come out to
looked.
the same music, or did they come out separate?
No, they came out together.
That's my pet peeve. It's going on in wrestling way too much now, where people are tag team champions and they come out to separate entrances. It's like, no, dude, be a tag team or don't be a tag team. Stop mocking.
Both of them came out to Too Cold's music, and both of them were dancing, and one danced very horribly.
Who came first, them or High Energy?
Them.
You sure?
Yes.
93?
Wait, High Energy of which? What do you mean? High
Coco
Energy
and Owen. Coco and Owen.
No, it might have been. Well, it might have been. It might have been High Energy. Yeah.
Yeah. This is probably.
But they suck too.
I know this, but it's probably their way of stealing. We need a team like that. Everything someone's stealing from.
That's not a good steal. That's a bad steal. At least at least both Coco and Owen had a rep. Marcus had no rep. He was being like,
he was a handsome stranger, man.
No. It was white privilege. I'm gonna say this reflection. It was white privilege. He was gifted to be, for a black man like Too Cold Scorpio to carry his ass, and he got free money. That was white privilege. That's all I'm gonna say. But anyway, let's say about this match here, TW, with the Hollywood Blondes. Again, well, like you said, Stone Cold wasn't happy to be in the tag team situation, but he made it work. This match was actually a good match per se. And of course, the Hollywood Blondes, with the fuckery Reflectionites, they did win. So what say you?
So this isn't going to add to it, because this is looking at it through the eyes of a wrestler.
Okay.
Absolutely, 100%. I believe Austin was supposed to come off the second rope and hit Bagwell for that finish. Mm-hmm. And when he got in the ring, he was too far away. So instead of going towards the turnbuckle, he stopped and it just dropped an axe handle to his stomach while he had the perfect plex on Pillman, and then Pillman got a 3 count. You never see someone win a match for something like that. Like if it's not a title belt or a boot or something where he's hitting him while he's pinning a guy, but he just literally did this to his stomach and they won.
It's funny you say that. So let me ask you this question from from a wrestler / booker sense when you see that kind of fuck up? Because who gets the blame? Do you blame Austin? Because again,
you blame Bagwell.
Oh, you blame Bagwell because
he gave the fisherman suplex too far away.
You don't blame the other people like directing them better. You know how like maybe Bill Watts or maybe like Dusty might say.
If you watch the end, Austin gets in the ring and he's going to climb on the rope, sees how far away they are. He's too close to one turnbuckle for Austin to use that one. So he's going to the nearest one, sees he's too far and says, screw it, runs and just drops a double axe handle, and then Bagwell gets pinned by Pillman. But if he would have came out the second rope, it would have looked more lethal. It would have looked more like, okay, he knocked the wind out of him. But to just drop it on him, that's Austin covering for Bagwell's bad ring. You ever hear ring general? That they know where they're at in the ring? Yeah, Buff wasn't that yet.
Oh, okay.
He was not Buff yet, and he was not a ring general because he didn't know where the hell he was. He did it too far away.
I'm glad that even you said that Buff would get, maybe chastised, maybe in the back by Dusty or Bill Watts, who was running
too far away, man. You gotta be somewhere where he can reach you.
And I know Bill Watts, if he was still running WCW at this time, I'm not sure if he was under probation. He probably would have fined him. He would find Buff Bagwell some money. You're getting a $50 fine for fucking up that finish or whatever the case may be.
Because it made him look bad. It made him look like you might as well get beat by a finisher standing in the middle of the ring if you're going to get beat by a double axe handle to the stomach.
And that's where the conspiracy theory comes with the professor, with Ric Flair or Dusty or Bill Watts, kind of like shafting Too Cold Scorpio. Maybe I'm not going to say Too Cold Scorpio is a perfect angel Reflectionites. Don't get me wrong. We know that maybe Too Cold has an attitude. I'm going to talk about that attitude. Too Cold had a little the cocaine problem, which was paramount to the WWF story, but I'll talk about that a little bit later, which I already heard the so you understand why he
I didn't know.
He left prematurely, but he was released in 1994 from WCW Reflectionites. But
released or contract came up?
No, released. Because again, I think he had some words with Ric Flair because he was, again, the booker at that time to a degree. But he did one more commitment for WCW, and he did that, that collision in Korea where the 100,000 stadium, Inoki against Ric Flair. He was working with Inoki's Japanese organization at the time, or he had a co-promotion with All Japan. They needed some feeders. Right. And Too Cold was one of those people. He needed some bodies there. And infamously, Reflectionites, if you did not watch Dark Side of the Ring, Too Cold Scorpio did an international incident in Korea. He beat the shit out of Road Warrior Hawk. He talked about it at Dark Side of the Ring, but he did not want to fuck up Road Warrior Hawk, TW. He wanted to fuck up Ric Flair. And Inoki's people begged him. They were like, please, Scorpio, please save it for when we go back to Japan. Don't do it in Korea. You're going to go to jail. Right. You are never going to leave North Korea. So what say you, TW, about...
They were in North Korea?
Yeah.
Kim Jong-un, Korea?
Yeah.
What the fuck? I didn't know that's what that was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
WCW played with fire. They went to China, North Korea.
Yeah, for that collision in Korea, for that 100,000. So
we should review that show one day. I never heard or seen it.
What's the ECW about that story? He was trying to be professional. He was trying to be professional. He knew he had
Road Warrior Hawk's ass in a fist fight. Hawk fought back
on a bus. Road Warrior Hawk was high. He was drunk, but Too Cold wasn't that high. So he beat the shit out of him. So what say you, again, when you're in Korea, when you're in a different country, it's not a democratic nation. You know this. You might do something. But what say you, TW, about
what
almost slipping? No, nothing. I mean, he beat him up, but, let's say cooler heads prevailed.
He didn't get arrested then.
He didn't get arrested. But, what say you, you're a wrestler, you don't like somebody, but then, you're trying to be professional, but you don't care where you're at. What say you?
It's funny you say that because I've been pretty blessed to not have people I didn't like. If I was still doing it, that probably wouldn't be the case because there's people that I don't like anymore.
Right.
And mostly because they talk shit about me behind my back more so than I give a shit about anything else they've done or not done. And, the people who try to who know you in person and kiss your ass and then get on Facebook and then act like you're a different person and like you're this, that, and yet. No, motherfucker, you've known me for 20 years. You never thought that about me once. Now, because I vote Republican, now I'm misogynist, racist, homophobic, whatever. And they talk about it behind the scene, not on there where I can defend myself and put them in their place. But I digress. But back when I was coming to the tail end of it, I would wrestle guys where I didn't want to wrestle them. Like, I didn't want to be in there with him, kind of like Steve Austin taking his ball and going home because he didn't want to lose to Brock. And I think I told you the story, even actually recently I told you, where I didn't even know the kid. But this kid was, new kid. He's coming up, and he was a lot like me when I was coming up, like tried to be a pretty boy. I know looking at this, you wouldn't think that. But back then I was a little bit more of a pretty boy. And when I lost the heavyweight title in June, we'll say, and in July, they had the light heavyweight title tournament, and I lost in the first round to this kid who was on his third match. And everybody was pissed off about it. And I just went in the ring, and I beat his ass for 14 and a half minutes, and then I had him roll me up in a small package when I body slammed him.
You gave him a receipt, and then,
And I told the kid the entire time I was beating his ass, I cut him off. Everything he tried to do, I stop him, and I do something else. I think I took a couple bumps for him, but I said to him, kid, this ain't about you. And then when he beat me, the entire fucking venue, because I'd been wrestling there for 3, 4, 5 years, fucking booed. Like, it was almost the Hogan NWO throw things in the ring. People were stunned. And I was a good guy. So I couldn't even be like, screw you, to make them hate me. And I got in the back, and I never wrestled for them guys again. And everybody in the back was like, what the fuck? Like, no one knew. And because I guess
you gotta
I never made a big deal about it in the back. I just went out there and ate that kid alive, and then lost. And so if I had to wrestle someone I didn't like, I think I'd be able to do it. But I think you'd be waiting for them to take a liberty, and then you're taking it back. I think I talked about this before. One of my favorite moments in the history of wrestling was Mankind versus Shawn Michaels at In Your House, where Michaels gets so mad at him, he just starts beating the shit out of him in the corner. And then in the middle of it, they go right back to working spots. And I'm like, that's money right there. Because Foley just took it. He didn't swing back. And then they got the train back on the tracks after Shawn vented and beat the shit out of him. And then I've never gone back and watched it, but there's another story where Bulldog was wrestling Vader. And this is around that time, 93 or whatever. Remember, I think I told you this before, there was only like 4 guys that would wrestle Vader. Everyone else said, I'm not working them. It was Sting, Cactus Jack.
Well, let's not digress. I understand. I just want to keep up with, people do this.
Like, obviously, Too Cold wasn't going to get a match with Ric Flair, is the big picture, right? But if he did, he could do things to Ric Flair, and Ric Flair would have to take it.
And that was an investment that Inoki could not afford to lose.
Right.
So Road Warrior Hawk, being the guy that he was, Reflectionites, he took, you could say he kind of was the sacrificial lamb. But of course, cocaine and alcohol played a huge part of the ass whooping that he took. But anyway, I digress a little bit here. So let's move on to, since he was released in 94, TW, he ventured into one of the most important organizations in the history of professional wrestling. And that is and I'm not being biased. I'm just being objective because I'm the most objective man in the IWC, YWC, PWC punditry. He ventures to Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, to be.
He wasn't there before WCW?
No.
Oh, I thought he was in ECW and then went to WCW.
No, he was in WCW. He was in WCW first. Then he was.
Because that's when they started, 93, 94. Yeah, you're right.
92. But anyway, again, that's a digression here. But
Eastern?
It was Eastern. But he ventured into ECW in 94. Well, again, I'll answer it in this way, TW, because there was that supposed relationship between WCW and ECW. So they, Tuco was part of that WCW squad, and he was in the NWA heavyweight title tournament with Shane Douglas. He was in the finals of that NWA tournament with Shane Douglas, and of course, we already know that history of dropping the belt and then putting up that ECW torch. But neither here nor there. But he was there in 94. So, in my humble opinion, Reflectionites, and I'll say this, the potential was met from 94 to 96 in ECW. Multiple time ECW World Television Champion TW, multiple time ECW World Tag Team Champion, and during the time in ECW, he held the tag team titles and the television title at the same time, where he had the moniker Two Gold Scorpio. So that was another name for him.
Becky Two Belts.
Well, he was. There wasn't Becky. There wouldn't have been Becky Two Belts if it wasn't for Two Gold Scorpio. So I just wanted to say that.
I like it.
So the potential.
You want to hear something ironic?
What is that?
The match you had me watch against him and Shooter Dean Malenko. Dean Malenko was in one half of the tag champs and the very first TV champion.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
And he was part of the
Shane
Douglas's Triple Threat, one of the originals, the second incarnation of the Triple Threat. But
that's not original.
No, the original was him, Matt Bourne, and Hughes. But again, I digress on that.
Wow. When was the one with Lance Storm and Justin Credible or whatever?
That's the fourth iteration. That's not even
the one I thought was the first.
No, Jesus Christ. That's why I'm the
Matt
professor.
Hughes and Matt Bourne was the first Triple Threat.
Mr. Hughes, Matt Bourne, or Born Again, Dorn.
That was awesome, by the way. I didn't even know that happened.
That was the first incarnation of the Triple Threat. But again, neither here nor there. So again, the potential was fully, shown out in ECW. He was a pillar. I know you don't like that word, but he was one of the main players of ECW during that time. And one of the greatest memories of Too Cold Scorpio that I remember, because just like anything, you need a reason to watch ECW. And when I kind of stumbled onto it, there was a couple of reasons. The first reason was I noticed it was Cactus. I noticed Cactus Jack, so I knew him from WCW days. The second reason was Shane Douglas, and I remembered my Dynamic Dude days. I saw him. But the third reason was seeing Too Cold Scorpio. So when I saw him, and of course, when he was in ECW TW, there was no filter. And you felt real. His promos felt real. The presentation felt real. The dancing felt realer. So there was nothing more real. Whatever. You know what I'm talking about. But there was nothing like I can joke about it with you, and I can joke about it with the Reflectionites. Again, with the Southern wrestling, we know the audience, we know the politics. In ECW, he was free to express himself, and the audience base was not looking at him any other way except a great wrestler in ECW. What say you about Too Cold Scorpio, Two Gold Scorpio in ECW? And want to talk about the matches that you saw, and especially the match that you saw with him and Sabu in your neck of the woods.
Dude, the guy. It's funny because the promo he made before the match with Matt Bourne that I watched was probably the first time I ever seen him do a promo where it was that, like, just a guy talking, right? Mm-hmm. I don't even remember any of his promos in WCW or Splash Funk. So he's always been a guy to me that would have been his missing ingredient, would have been the talking. But then when I watched him do that promo,
that's why I wanted you to see that it wasn't about the match. It was about the promo.
That was your most gracious short video ever, and the one where I thought, man, I would have liked to see it go on longer. But I was happy seeing Matt Bourne, right? I liked him as Big Josh, damn it. So, and what a terrible gimmick that was. But wasn't he Norman's friend or something? I don't know how he got it.
Don't digress too much. Let's keep it on.
But he did it was a real promo, like you would want. Like there was a couple whatever, but he said what he needed to say, and I'm sure he only got better. And I just, I think my thoughts on ECW from what I was being shown in the aftermaths was thumbtacks and chairs and tables and Dudley Boys and Sabu and Taz and all, and it was just not my cup of tea. But now that I've watched so much of it with you, I would have absolutely been all in on Shane Douglas. I would have been all in on RVD. I would have been all in on Too Cold. And he was a babyface, right?
In ECW?
Yeah.
He was both. He was both babyface and heel.
But
I call him the ultimate. He was a real tweener.
Because I remember, and I completely forgot he was in the finals of that tournament. But I remember that Eastern Championship tournament to crown a new NWA World Champion, and I remember seeing the footage because it was so controversial with the putting the. I don't even. How the fuck did you even watch that in '90 something? I've seen the video, so
the tape trade.
Yeah, but nobody's trading tapes with me. Someone must have just showed it to me. But I saw it and I appreciated it and I forgot it was too cool. It was a thing. But then it became Extreme Championship Wrestling, and then I didn't hear about it. And then I saw what I saw would be scaffolds, and you know what I mean? Like, and again, at my size back then, $180, $190, they would have murdered me there. So I was like, I have no interest in it. If I wasn't wrestling, if I was 5 years younger, like say you, and I just watched it as a fan, I would have been all in. I'm convinced of it now,
dude. And you would have had a banger with Scorpio in ECW. Yeah. That's just the honest truth. But you would have had to take a chair to the head. But again, neither here nor there.
Fine. I took chairs to the head with other guys, but I don't want to fall off a scaffold. I don't want to. That was the other thing. Every time I saw something was someone diving off a balcony, three floors into a pack of tables.
Let's not go away from the stereotypes of ECW. I don't need to convince you on ECW.
I'm just telling you, that's all I ever saw was that.
The matches you saw with Dean Malenko, the matches you saw with Sabu.
I've never been a Dean Malenko fan. I never probably will be a Dean Malenko fan, but I have a conspiracy theory after watching him in Too Cold.
Oh, God. What is it?
I didn't remember who won. Who the fuck won that? Anyway, it was a one win, and I fell asleep. Dean Malenko is Roderick Strong's father. There's no doubt in my mind. They had the same exact build. They're both 4 foot nothing, and that's his dad. There's no doubt. And isn't he in AEW, Dean Malenko? Is he an agent or something?
Yes.
Yeah.
Why is that a conspiracy?
That he's Roderick Strong's father.
No, man. His father is Boris Malenko, man.
No, that's Dean's dad.
You're right. So now Roderick Strong is Roderick Malenko. Now you're saying that?
Yes.
I don't see it in the chins. I don't see it in
the
eyes.
He took his mother's looks and his dad's build.
Jesus Christ, TW. What is wrong with you, man?
I tell you what. I wouldn't want to look like Dean Malenko.
You see, Reflectionites, he kind of, you know, when they move away from NXT and when they move away from WWE, you see these little pot shots that my man TW takes.
No.
Oh, yeah.
I just told Travis yesterday, as much as I hate to admit it, Broderick Strong is better off in AEW than he would be. He will be. The ceiling is, there's still a ceiling, make no mistake. But the ceiling is going to be higher than it would be if he left NXT and went to main roster. Like, I'm anxious to see where JD McDonough ends up, because I love that dude, and I can't imagine he does well on Raw.
Right. I just wanted to say one thing. At least with Scorpio and Malenko, they made the television. Well, of course, there was not that many titles in ECW. It was the heavyweight, the television, and the tag team titles per se.
FTR.
What?
FTW.
That wasn't a recognized title.
But he had it.
That was a storyline title. Let's not get. You always digress too much. Let me stay on the. Let's stay on the plane.
And it's in your wheelhouse. What you're talking about?
Stay on the plane. Let me stay on the plane.
No women's champion.
But anyway, the television title would be what TW would say the workman's title, the workhorse title, and of course, Too Cold Scorpio and Dean Malenko were perfect television champions, workhorse champions, whatever the case may be. So that was one of the most beautiful matches that at that time showed the beauty of ECW, because again, with your perceptions, which is, you know, I understand them and I respect them, but people forget not seeing Too Cold Scorpio matches against Dean Malenko, not the Too Cold Scorpio matches against Shane Douglas, the Too Cold Scorpio matches against Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, and so on and so forth. He hardly used chairs.
RBD.
No, but what I'm just saying is those matches should have said, oh, okay, I understand that certain wrestlers do chairs and tables and thumbtacks, but these wrestlers don't need it. And they didn't really even want to use it. They wanted to show the purity and the sport of wrestling. What's ATW about that assessment?
That's fucking readily apparent in hindsight, but it was not in the magazine. So, you know,
there was an agenda. Every magazine had an agenda against ECW.
Well, they were making it an alternative too. So, I mean, I think that helped get them fans, is seeing all that shit. And what's that group that's around now that Matt Cardona wrestles for? I can't believe I called him Matt Cardona. GZW or something?
GCW, yeah. Game
that
Changer
shit
Wrestling
is what I thought ECW was, and it has a following.
That's worse.
You know?
Yes.
Is that where Dewey got the light bulb and almost killed him? Was it GZW?
Dewey?
Fucking Arquette. David Arquette.
Oh yeah, him against Nick Gage or Cage, whatever his name is.
Yeah, Gage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's nuts. I would want nothing to do with that. And by the way, I know we're digressing. We're going back. When the fuck did RJ City turn 60 years old and start interviewing people for AEW?
I don't watch that. I don't really care about that.
AEW?
I know what you're talking about. I just find it like
he's a guy.
It's pointless airtime for RJ City or whatever.
I met him 5 years ago when he was here with David Arquette for the Border City show, and I thought, why is this guy not on TV? He had everything. He had a good look. He had a good moveset. He could talk. And then I finally see him the other day when I was watching 3 weeks worth of AEW, and I'm like, oh shit, RJ City's there. And then he got beat up in 2 seconds. And as he's laying on the ground, I just see all this gray hair and went, what the hell happened? Is that all he is there as an interviewer?
I guess. He has one of those podcasts on AEW like platforms or whatever. So neither here nor there. But anyway, let's get back to this. Well, let's get back to this Too Cold Scorpio spotlight, this untapped potential spotlight. Again, the purity and the beauty of Too Cold Scorpio. You know, his character was flawed. I wouldn't say flawless, but it was so good in ECW. I wish they would have like pulled the trigger and made him an ECW heavyweight champion. But he never was. But there was a phone call. It was from Connecticut, and it was from Vincent Kennedy McMahon. So, of course, we already know the logistics. We already know that Too Cold Scorpio is a businessman, and he knew that he was going to get paid more money going to WWF. He was going to get, more eyes on him going to Monday Night Raw.
No more ramen and raw potatoes, baby. We're going to shit. So
there is that reality, but that reality came with a cost. So depending on anything, I'm going to look at it from this way. In 1996, I was excited. I knew that he was leaving ECW in early 1996 CW. So, the fans didn't say you sold out. They gave him a standing ovation from his last match. And I forget who he fought last. But they gave him a standing ovation in ECW. They wished him well. But in the back of our minds, we're like, don't fuck this up, Vince. You got somebody that can be a mid-card Intercontinental Champion, bar none. He could have took the torch from Shawn Michaels and had those banger matches with the IC title, WrestleMania style with ladder matches. But again, neither here nor there. But Vince McMahon had other ideas because I guess Too Cold Scorpio owns the copyright and the trademark of the name Too Cold Scorpio. Vince McMahon thought to switch up the name so he can, make money off of his name for the merchandising purposes. That name became Flash Funk. He had the Papa Durban, whatever hat is. He looked like a 70s pimp. He had the long coat. He had two Funkadactyl wannabes, you could say.
They were first,
but I don't care. That shows you why I didn't really care about the gimmick. Once I saw him come down that ramp with the Funkettes and that god awful music, Flash, the fans didn't like it, and you know why? I could tell the fans were so like disgusted because that fan base was the ECW fan base. That fan base was the Monday Night War fan base where we were trying to watch all of that stuff. And if you was really, if it was tape trading or just knowing who he was in ECW, we knew that shit couldn't fly. We barely got, that man, and I'll digress a little bit. When Cactus Jack went to WWE as Mankind, we were like, what the fuck is this? But the character,
he made it work.
He made it work. Flash Funk, he try as he might, he couldn't make Flash Funk work because we couldn't accept it. So what's AEW? Again, now you see your man as Flash Funk, not as Scorpio, not as Too Cold Scorpio, not as Too Cold Scorpio, but Flash Funk.
Immediately didn't like it. I'm like, what the fuck? But then he took his shit and then he wrestled in a horrible fucking like Elvis Presley fucking disco fucking jumpsuit. But he still wrestled like he did. He still did all this stuff. So I was like, you know what? Beggars can't be choosers. I'm just gonna cheer for him. And I started wrestling by then. So, Matter of fact, that was after I already met him.
Mm-hmm.
So I was happy for him on one hand, very disappointed in that name, man. I just remember thinking, why? And I know now, as a grown ass man, I know, first of all, they're not all going to be hits. The ringmaster, Steve Austin. Second of all, I get it. You want ownership of the product and all that. He ain't the first guy to do it. Won't be the last. I like that more and more guys get to keep their name in both promotions. In a perfect world, that should be how it always is. And it used to be that way. But at the same time, I've seen it. I've seen guys come to WWE, come out, and the fans had no reaction to them, and they were huge in WCW. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what? How do you not have a reaction to this guy, right? Like, I'll be honest with you. I don't even think I've told you this. And I was still on the fence about this guy. At WrestleMania last year, I was so afraid people weren't going to react to Cody being there. But I think the reason it was the safe place to debut was it was fans from everywhere. If it would have just been LA fans or wherever the hell it was, there's a chance they might not know who that guy is.
That was Texas last year.
Yeah. So, but say it wasn't WrestleMania. Say it was Texas and it was King of the Ring and he debuted. There's a chance no one knows who he is if they don't watch both shows. They might remember him from back in the day, but when he comes out looking like the bad guy in Lethal Weapon 1 with the blonde hair, they're like, who the hell's this guy? But I think because it was WrestleMania, I honestly think no matter what, he was getting that reaction. But I'm saying I was afraid that if he came out and didn't get a reaction, it would be like, well, ain't nobody from AEW ever coming here. Because why would you? If they don't know Cody, they sure the hell ain't going to know Frankie Kazarian or, whoever else would leave and come here. But yeah, so Flash Funk comes out. They changed names because sometimes people don't even know who the person. Mark Merrow, that one pissed me off too. But it's the opposite. They couldn't call him Johnny B. Bad. But you know what I wanted them to call him?
What?
Johnny B. Good. Fuck it. You went from Sid Vicious to Sid Justice. You can go from Johnny B. Bad to Johnny B. Good. I hated that he was the wild man Mark Merrow. Flash Funk and Mark Merrow, two guys who I absolutely thought the world of as Johnny B. Bad and Too Cold Scorpio and was happy. They're the 1 and 1A of people where I was like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, instead of just being happy for them being there, I was mad that they got different names. Curious.
So, in essence, he could beat somebody like the Goon as the match I showed you, so we don't really have to talk about that match. It was basically a squash match. But again, he can't beat Stone Cold Steve Austin. He can't beat The Undertaker. He can't beat Kane. He can't have that. And you can see, like, the regression from like what Vince maybe like you said, like Vince was high on him, but when Flash Funk didn't get over because again we couldn't accept it, and again that fan base was watching all three, and you could tell like why did they do that? They fucked it up. So you could tell the regression, and he. You know what it
almost felt like?
What?
It's funny you bring up the Goon, obviously because we talked about the match, but it felt like a Goon, T.L. Hopper. Radford. It felt like they took someone we knew and gave them a gimmick, but they were still a jobber. Like they're going to beat each other, so they get wins. But when they wrestle everybody else, it was basically an enhanced jobber.
Right, and that's what Too Cold became. He became an enhanced jobber with a gimmick of being a '70s pimp named Flash Funk, and then he shortened his name to Scorpio. He was part of the Job Squad with Al Snow in '98, and then because he was addicted to cocaine. He was addicted, he smoked reefer, daily on the tours. He actually got fired, TW, because in '99, if I remember the story
he was
correctly,
there 3 years?
Yeah, he was there 3 years.
Wow.
He was fired in '99 because during that week they were touring in the Colorado Phoenix area. So he bought tickets for his family, but he no-showed to the place because he was high. Jim Ross was like, you need to get help.
Right.
So this is the story because Too Cold even said it himself. Do me a favor. If you really are serious to want to clean up your act, call me at Monday at 8:00. I'm just giving you a time scenario.
Right.
Too Cold got high on Monday and called him Tuesday at 8:00. And Jim Ross had to say, we're going to have to let you go. That was it. That was the test to see if he was serious enough to want to get help and, be off the road. So, TW, what say you about that? You buy tickets for your family and show to not even to perform in front of your family. I don't think you would ever do that. You would never do that.
You know what the internet would do? The internet would go, what a bunch of bullshit. He gets the house built up with his family and then they didn't even use them. That's what the internet community would have said.
Mm-hmm.
You ever hear that story about Chris Chelios in the Winter Classic?
What, that he bought tickets for his family and the
whole family came in and Mike Babcock was like, I'm not playing him. And the GM, Ken Holland, was like, dude, play him. And he's like, okay. So he dressed 7 defensemen, never played him the whole game. And at the end, for the last shift, he said, Chelios, get out there. And Chelios looked at him and said, fuck you. The whole time he had his son handing him beers through the fucking glass and was getting hammered on the bench while he was playing. And told Babcock to fuck off.
Hey,
but what a dick move by Babcock, right?
Oh, yeah. But this is the opposite. Scorpio dicked himself because of the cocaine, because of the reefer and all that stuff. So I kind of found that story. It's a tragic irony. It's funny now in hindsight because, again,
but that's when you know you need help. When you're not excited to wrestle in front of your family because you're out getting high.
Yeah, so he was released from his contract in 1999.
You know where he probably picked up that drug habit?
Where?
Philadelphia.
No, I'm not.
I ever tell you about the Raven in the middle of our locker room?
Dude, I already know the ECW locker room stories with Sandman, Raven.
No, in our locker room.
Oh, what?
He said, hey, if any of you guys want to get high, any street, any city that has a Martin Luther King Drive Boulevard, go there. You'll find drugs. He told everyone in our locker room that.
Oh, yeah.
Because some guy was asking around for drugs, and I'm like, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, if you were from around here, you wouldn't go anywhere near our Martin Luther King Drive, at least not at night.
So let me condense the latter part of Too Cold Scorpio's career. After getting released in 1999, he would venture back to South Philadelphia, born and raised. He went back because, of course, Paul Heyman needed bodies. So, during that time of the financial crisis, but Too Cold got his money. He ain't gonna mess. You don't mess with Too Cold's money.
Can't do coke without money.
That's true.
What Dark Side of the Ring was his? Was it him?
No,
was it ECW?
It was Collision in Korea Dark Side episode. But he went back to ECW in 1999 and 2000. So, it was a nostalgic celebration of Too Cold Scorpio's, he was there to get people over. But we knew that he would venture between here and, of course, in Japan, where he would go extensively to Pro Wrestling Noah. He was one of the, I'm not going to say pillars, but he jump-started that promotion, TW, Pro Wrestling Noah, with himself.
Was he the Black Wazambi there?
Probably was. That name was, that name was more for the Japanese audience. So him and Van Vader were in Pro Wrestling Noah, and they were the GHC Tag Team Champions, and he was a GHC hardcore champion to a degree. So, and of course, Reflectionites, he's never retired. He's been fighting everywhere. He did Ring of Honor. He does these indie promotions. And TW, the last piece de resistance of a match I showed you was in actually late 2022, early 2023, where he was in a triple threat. That's a celebration in itself. Himself, RVD, and Enzo Amore having a triple threat match. And it doesn't matter who won or lost. It didn't really matter to me. It was just seeing Too Cold Scorpio and RVD still doing what they love to do at their particular
And guess what they did in that match?
What did they do?
They worked arm bars, they worked reversals, they worked headlocks, they worked takedowns. It was a thing of beauty. The only reason I wanted to kill you when I was watching this match is you sent me some fucking stupid fat kid fan cam video, and then when RVD landed on the floor in front of him, he just had the camera on RVD for 5 minutes. The whole time Enzo's finally working with Scorpio, because everything Enzo did was comedy until then.
Because that's a fan. I mean, what's he going to do? He got distracted. That was his man.
Put a regular video camera footage up.
Dude, we're talking about high school here, man. What do you expect?
So it was Big Time Wrestling. It was Bobby Fulton probably has a video on YouTube of it.
Hey, it is.
Do you even know who Bobby Fulton is?
Of course, the Fantastics.
Oh.
Jesus Christ.
Jeez.
Don't insult the professor.
Easy, blasphemer.
This is not a gimmick. This is a lifestyle when I call myself the professor. But anyway, TW, tell the mark cards. And the reason I wanted to show you this match for a different reason, because being 55, 56, 57 years old, you cannot wrestle like a 20-year-old, Sammy Guevara. You cannot wrestle like the Young Bucks right now. Scorpio can still do a couple of moves here and there, but you can't beat Father Time, and you have to change your style. Agree, disagree, have a different take.
Yeah, I agree. However, I believe him and RVD both are doing shit off the top rope still.
No, I'm not saying that they don't do it, but I just
they don't do it as often.
Right.
Or he ain't doing no 3.5 flips and landing on his leg or his ass as a leg drop. But he looked good. I thought, he looked older for sure. Most importantly, I think him and RVD both looked like they were having fun. Me personally, I'm not. Obviously, we're all part of the IWC, right? It's just the way we're on the internet talking about wrestling. We're part of it, whether we want to be or not. And for the record, and for the 13 people that listen to us, when we say that, we're not talking about everyone. We're talking about the fucking squeaky wheel. We're talking about the fucking handful of idiots that ruin it for everybody else who, like you said, think they're so smart and their shit don't stink or whatever. I think he was exonerated. I'm not sure. But I'm not one of these people who wants to hate somebody. So, Enzo, I hate that no one wants to give this guy a chance. And one of the things I thought was good for Bobby Fulton, because I bet you at least one or two people said, "You sure you want to book that guy?" Yeah, I want to book that guy. Book that guy, right? If he murdered somebody, if he raped somebody, by all means.
Bobby Fulton? Bobby Fulton?
Enzo.
Oh. Jesus Christ.
I just think this guy has a passion for the business. I think he has a knack for it. And I was happy to see him in there with RVD and Too Cold. And one of the things that he showed me in this match was that he respects those guys, because all he did was make him look like $1 million. He didn't care about anything else. That's the guy that respects the business. So the other guy that I feel that way about is, and I've never seen this guy wrestle one time. And no matter what people think, there's details matter. And if you're somewhere where something is okay, but it's not okay here, it's not your place to judge. You judge that entire country. You don't judge the person who's doing what you're allowed to do in that country, in my opinion. No matter how right or wrong it is to me, Marty Scurll, another guy who seems to have it. I feel every time I see Seth Rollins, I think, this guy probably stole this from Marty Scurll. I don't even know that much about Marty, but I know that when I see Seth Rollins, he makes me think of that guy. And so it's probably the outlandishness, because that's everything I ever seen with him was a top hat and feathers and stuff like that.
You know where you can see Marty Scurll matches?
No.
Ring of Honor.
Good, then I'm going to watch it.
2017, 2018, he was there. So just giving you the heads up.
I mean, right now, this guy can't make a living because someone accused him.
Well, he wrestles in Mexico. That's all he can do. That's all.
Good,
that's the only place
then at least he's making money, because I think, and the latest one, I don't know the story. I do know that every woman's not telling the truth. I know that. And for people to just believe the victim, first of all, I got to believe she is a victim for me to believe her, right? And the ones who are victims, I'm 100% in their corner. But there are so many manipulative women in this world who just accuse people, and then everyone believes that you just ruined that guy's life, and he may or may not have done it. And the latest one is the guy who used to be with American Pit Bulls, or whatever the hell they were called, where he retired and then he unretired.
David Richards. Yeah.
I'm going to fight this shit. The dude that plays Kane, Jonathan Majors, he's going through it right now, where there's people showing videos. This girl supposedly broke her hand and got a black eye from this dude. Yeah, 5 minutes later, she's drinking in the bar with that hand that's supposed to be broke. So at least question it. I'm not saying he didn't do it, but at least prove it. So Enzo versus Scorpio versus.
By the way, Reflectionites, this political, not political, but this
political, social
commentary. This social commentary by TW is sponsored by Ultra Bright Beer, the only beer that will be straight for you. But anyway, go ahead, TW.
Is that a real thing?
What?
Ultra Bright Beer?
Ultra Bright Beer, yeah, that's a real beer.
They're
That's
going
a
anti-Bud Light?
That's anti-Bud Light, yeah.
Oh,
that's
dude,
that's sold in your neck of the woods.
I'm going to crack a can of that. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to crack a can of that on next week's episode. Well, we're taking a week off, you said. But
yes,
anyhow, I'm glad you added that match in there because, I'm happy to see two. I'm happy. Dude, the timing of you sending that after I just had my heart broke Friday night looking at RV, looking like Danny DeVito. I'm like, what? What happened? This guy was just ripped in Impact Wrestling a week ago. What the hell happened? So to see that match and to see it was 2023, late 2022, I was like, all right. He hasn't let himself go like I did. But it was cool to see. And again, I'm not defending Enzo, right? I know there's many people think he's a piece of shit. That's great. But
he was innocent. But
he's
anyway,
yet to be convicted of anything. He was exonerated. I think if he was a nicer person, he probably got his job back, but he wasn't. I still don't know what's going on with Velveteen Dream.
Okay, let's not go into that social commentary.
I'm just saying.
Just keep it.
I just think
I love you, TW, but you ramble to this way.
I'm not rambling.
You ramble to that way.
I just want to put a pin in it. I'm just saying for the record. I'm not defending.
You don't put a pin. You put darts.
Not a pin. I want to put a bow on it. I want to wrap it up.
Okay.
I'm not defending any one of these guys. I don't know enough about any of the situations to say they didn't do it. But what I'm saying is not one of them's been convicted of anything. I don't even get me started about the dick toss guy because I clearly don't. No. But I'm saying when these people come after him, this dude had to get a job working at Disneyland, and then they got him fired there too. It's like, come on. This is what makes guys go drive into warehouses with bombs and detonate them because you've just taken away their reason to live because they can't feed themselves. I think people need to lay off people and wait. The Dan Bongino rule, that'll probably make some people mad. Wait 24 hours before you decide to make a comment on some shit. Let the details come out before you just bury people for the sake of burying them. So my whole point in all this is thank you for including a modern day match, Too Cold Scorpio, that made me feel good about two other people who one I thought became a walrus, but he's still in shape, and the other one to see he was worked.
To put a bow on it, you just said it yourself. Too Cold Scorpio looks great for his age at 57. I hope I look like that. Too Cold Scorpio wrestles a little bit slower, but he's wrestling a lot more smarter. Does a 450 here and there, and don't get me wrong, Reflectionites, but he can't like do a springboard. Like
he ain't doing it 5 nights a week.
He ain't doing it 5 nights a week. So he does it when it's, I guess the word is when it's special, warranted or special to do it. And Big Time Wrestling was the perfect opportunity to do that. And of course, his opponent being Enzo Amore and Mr. Monday Night, Mr. Pay-Per-View, Rob Van Dam was apropos to doing it. So let's put a bow on Too Cold Scorpio. Again, I'm going to say this. He is untapped potential, and that is no disrespect to Too Cold Scorpio. He has had an exemplary career that a lot of wrestlers would love to have his career, his pedigree, the accomplishments. Again, ECW multiple-time champion, WCW tag team champion, Japan multiple championships there. WWE, we could, he got paid. I'll just say that. But Mexico, again, champion there. So what's the ECW? You always do this to me. I love you for that, but you always do this. You're going to say Timbuktu if you wanted to, if he wrestled there. But anyway, let's say ETW, put a bow on Too Cold Scorpio and keep it with Too Cold Scorpio. Put it with Mr.
Oh, I'm glad we did it. I for one wasn't sure he was still wrestling. Got to see that. I found out Matt Bourne had a swan song before he died tragically, and it was because of Too Cold Scorpio wrestling him and all the other stuff. I didn't know all this, the dark side of him, and to paraphrase Dark Side of Wrestling, I didn't know he had problems. It actually makes me feel better, like at least there may be some reasoning behind. He got in his own way, like I say about Scott Hall all the time, and doesn't mean I love either one of them any less. I'm glad we did it because I thought we were going to do it on someone else. So when you pulled his name out, I was like, all right, but I am going to go in my garage. I'm going to find my Flash Funk figure, and I'm going to put it in this room somewhere until they make a Too Cold Scorpio Legends figure somehow, some way. I'm going to make it happen. I'm going to write people.
Well, tweet Too Cold, tweet WWE, tweet Triple H to see if that's what happens.
I'm going to tweet Zack Ryder and his buddy, the other one. I'm going to tweet Ringside Collectibles. We're going to make it happen. There's so many people making wrestling
tag me and tag TN Coupon, and I'll retweet it for you. So
all right,
with
I'll do that. They're making so many companies are making wrestling figures now. There's no reason not to.
Right. With that being said, we close on this PWR Spotlight Untapped Potential Edition with Too Cold Scorpio. And because TW has had an exemplary attendance record for the professor, you know, he only took one week off, you know, when he was running and hiding from Big Ray, but that's neither here nor there. I forgave him. But he deserves a week off. I deserve a week off. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. So I don't know what we're going to do, but we're going to take the week off because we both need
I had an idea.
Recharge the batteries. What's that?
I had an idea. It's only a 2-hour show, too.
What is that?
Clash of Champions 1.
I think we did that.
I've never seen it, so how could I have done it? I've seen Flair.
I think I did that. I did that with Trav, and I did it with Ray.
What about Collision in Korea?
That's not a 2-hour show. That's a 2-day. That's a 2-day show.
We can condense.
Well, I'll think about it. Just that you gave me a suggestion. Maybe I might do a Clash of Champions 1 remix with TW since you never saw it. So I'll put that in the laboratories, TW. So with that being said, give out those socials so we can get out of here and go on our little mini vacation.
All right. The Pro Wrestling Coalition Network sponsors us. You can find them at PWC Network at podbean.com, Hami Media Group at podbean.com, Hami Media Group channelattitude.com. Our show is at PW Reflection. We should just let Couponer take over our Reflection handle. Every tweet notification I get is because he liked it, retweeted it, or added me to it. So, Team Couponer. So, at PW Reflection, Big Ray, every single social media avenue. I'm sure if you type in at Big Ray Hernandez, you will find him. And by the way, Big Ray, I tried following the A show on that other video platform.
You didn't condense it together.
No, I when I click the thing, it makes me sign in, and I don't know my password, so I went just to the thing and searched for that. Searched for her, searched for the show, couldn't find it. But if he wants to just give me another way, I'll look for it. But at Big Ray Hernandez at all avenues of social media. At Tommy119 is my Instagram and my original Twitter. Snapchat #Wonder. Facebook.com/Tommy Wonder. At the Tommy Wonder is my wrestling Twitter and my TikTok. And then Big Vito and Noel can be found at bigvitobrand.wixsite.com, WIXSITE, patreon.com/the Big Vito Brand. And then you can watch the early release of Reflection videos at twitch.tv/the Big Vito Brand.
And you can find me on my Twitter. We're not doing the Warrior. What the hell? See, you digress every which way. I love you for that. But anyway, you can find me on my Twitter at PWHustle, that's PWHustle Prof, and this gets uploaded by A-Track Brown. This will be on the PWHustle YouTube network. Follow my brothers in arms, Billy Ray Valentine at Obi-Wan, you know me, and of course, A-Track Brown at the number 8, TRAC Brown. And again, we're going to be off for a week, take a little week vacation, and we'll be back bigger and stronger. Maybe we might do a Clash of Champions 1 remix edition. Maybe we might do another episodic episode. We might go back to the movies. We might do rivalries. We might do another spotlight. We might do maybe greatest heel turns, greatest babyface turns. I don't know. I keep you on your toes, Reflectionites. I keep you on your toes.
What about greatest returns?
Ooh, see, now that's one. See, that's what. Woo! Now we're gonna talk about this for the week. I think I'm gonna go with that. Another Pro Wrestling Spotlight Greatest Returns Edition. Jesus Christ, we already did that. See, TW already did it. He's gonna lead the show. He's gonna host that show. That's gonna be all you. I'm gonna be the co-host.
What do you mean we already did it?
No, I'm saying you're gonna do it. You're gonna host it.
You're gonna pop in my head right away. I mean, that's not really much to talk about except for the return. Actually 3. But
no, we're gonna do it differently. We're not gonna do a return by one. We're going to do our greatest memories of returns.
Oh, like a top 5.
Yeah.
Damn, look at that.
There you go. See, I'm thinking with you. But with that being said, I'm the professor. That's Mr. Wonderful, Dr. Freakenstein, WWE in its own. Tommy Wonder saying good night, and we'll see you in 2 weeks with a brand new edition of the PWR podcast here at the Hami Media Group at podbean.com. Peace.
Deuces.
You're supposed to dance. You're supposed to do
I couldn't settle on Too Cold Scorpio or Flash. I didn't know how that one went.
You could have sang either one, but anyway.